Chapter 1321. Tang Wuling replied, yes, that's about right. He couldn't disclose his Golden Dragon King bloodline to Huang Sangyang, and it really did appear as if he possessed twin martial souls, so he was just going to pretend as if he did. As the two were conversing with one another, the spectators' fans had erupted into raucous discussion. Please quiet down, everyone. Next, we'll have the Pillar of the Empire personally analyze and review this spectacular mega battle. Tang Wuling turned to Huang Sangyang in a slightly surprised manner upon hearing this. A wry smile appeared on Huang Sangyang's face as he said, I didn't think I would lose, so I agreed to do this in order to share my knowledge in mechas, but it's pretty ironic that a loser like me has been tasked with reviewing the match. You're no loser, you're the most exceptional mecha pilot I've ever seen, Tang Wuling said in a genuine voice. In terms of pure mecha piloting skills, the difference between them really was night and day. Furthermore, Tang Wuling knew that when divine grade mechas were concerned, the individual powers of soul masters would play a far lesser role in mecha battles. At that point, there would be no way he would be able to beat Huang Sangyang with his current mecha piloting skills. He would only be able to give himself a chance of victory if he were to use some special methods. As such, Huang Sangyang was truly a mecha pilot who was worthy of respect. After stowing away their respective mechas, Tang Wuling left the platform, while Huang Sangyang remained behind to review the match. On the rostrum, Yue Tengyu nudged Dai Yuyan and said, I think we won this match, Your Highness. Shishi immediately chimed in, see, what did I say? It's so much like the sparring match we had the other day. None of the spectators are cheering now, are they? Dai Yuyan turned to the smug pair with a furious expression. Don't get cocky. Shishi and Yue Tengyu both burst into laughter. Watching Tang Wuling win the first match of the Trial of Five Gods had been extremely satisfying, and at the same time, even Shrek 6 monsters were in disbelief, let alone Dai Yuyan. They could only sense that Tang Wuling's mecha piloting skills had changed compared to back when he had participated in the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition. During that competition, Tang Wuling had been forced to use a vast array of other abilities to compensate for his lackluster mecha piloting skills, but his current set of mecha piloting skills was more complete. Most importantly, they knew that Tang Wuling hadn't even had to display many of his powerful abilities to win this battle, which meant that he would have more trump cards to use during the rest of the matches in the Trial of Five Gods. All of the representatives of the Douluo Empire in the Trial of Five Gods were the best that the Empire had to offer. Even if this were the only match that Tang Wuling won among all five, it would still mean that he was the best mecha pilot in the Douluo Empire. As such, he had already brought immense glory to the Tang sect. The smiling Douluo smile was as wide as ever, and instead of a gloomy expression that one would expect to see on Dai Tianling's face, there was only a contemplative look in his eyes. In contrast, NC was clearly more astonished than Dai Tianling was. Mechas and soul masters were completely different things. Essentially, a mecha was a tool through which a soul master could magnify their powers, but it definitely wasn't a simple task to pilot a mecha to a high degree of proficiency. Tang Wuling's mecha piloting skills were clearly inferior to Huang Sangyang's, but he surpassed Huang Sangyang when it came to integrating his soul skills with his mecha, which meant that he was a better overall mecha pilot than Huang Sangyang. Huang Sangyang was a titled Douluo, and he had done everything he could to maximize the offensive power of his Reaper Scythe. His mecha would take care of defenses, so he didn't have to worry about that aspect. Even so, he had still lost this match, and that basically confirmed that Tang Wuling was currently at least as powerful as a titled Douluo. Hey fatty, I heard you had a sparring match with your sect master, NC said to Hu Jie. Hu Jie shot a glance at him. What about it? Are you trying to get information out of me? Do you think I'll tell you? Haha, are you scared, brother NC? What would I have to fear? NC snapped. I'm just very curious about your sect master. Hu Jie shrugged and said, you won't have to be curious for long. I'm sure he'll put on even more spectacular displays during the next few matches. In any case, we've won the first match, so we've already performed well beyond expectations. Isn't that right, Your Majesty? Instead of giving a direct reply, Dai Tianling merely said, let's listen to what Huang Sangyang has to say. At this point, Huang Sangyang had already recovered his composure and made his way to the center of the stage. I'm sorry for not securing a victory. His first sentence immediately had all of the spectators falling silent, with the exception of a few female superfans yelling things like Huang Sangyang, we'll always love you at the tops of their lungs. Huang Sangyang sighed, a loss is a loss. I won't cheapen this match by spouting any excuses. Next, I'm going to begin the replay and commentate on the important points during the match from a third-person perspective. All of the images on the large screens reverted back to right before the commencement of the match. I'm sure everyone is already very familiar with Reaper of Despair, so I won't spend any time introducing it. Instead, I want to focus on my feelings when I first saw Sect Master Tang's unpredictable Blue Emperor. The first impression I was struck by was that this was an extremely simple and pure mecha. It didn't have any fancy bells and whistles, nor any special weapons. Its weapon was only an extremely simple spear. However, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to the construction of this mecha. The entire mecha was designed to be extremely streamlined, and all of its joints are very solid. Hence, my first impression was that this is a mecha that was designed to pursue absolute speed and control. As a divine grade mecha pilot, one of the most important skills was to accurately appraise an opponent's mecha prior to a battle, and Huang Sangyang had always been very good at this. Now that he was sharing his thoughts, the spectators were all feeling very enlightened. After that, the battle began. After confirming the characteristics of the opponent's mecha, I unleashed my first wave of attacks, prioritizing the goal of closing down the distance between the two mechas so his mecha doesn't go beyond the sphere of my control. From the rest of the match, I'm sure everyone could see that when unpredictable Blue Emperor was allowed some space, its explosiveness would increase significantly. With sufficient space to make use of, it would be able to convert all of that space into speed and power. Hence, the tactic that I employed from the get-go was correct. At this point, Tang Wuling had already returned to the resting area, where there was also a screen that was broadcasting the scenes unfolding in the stadium. As he looked at the images on the screen and listened to Huang Sangyang's commentary, Tang Wuling was struck by a novel sensation that he hadn't felt for a very long time. As he continued to listen, his admiration for Huang Sangyang grew even further as his commentary was spot on. There was no hyperbole, nor any details that had been missed. Furthermore, from his perspective, Tang Wuling was developing a deeper understanding of his own unpredictable Blue Emperor. Huang Sangyang continued. Reaper of Despair glided forward to close the distance and also used the side of despair to try and control unpredictable Blue Emperor. Just as I was unfamiliar with unpredictable Blue Emperor, the Tang sect master knew nothing about my Reaper of Despair as well. As such, he fell into my trap, and I was able to successfully control unpredictable Blue Emperor with my side of despair. Huang Sangyang expanded the image to focus on unpredictable Blue Emperor's back as he spoke. Chapter 1322. Please watch carefully here, everyone. At this point, I noticed something very important, which was unpredictable Blue Emperor's defensive capabilities. The side of despair possesses extremely potent offensive prowess and has a high-frequency vibration function that'll allow it to slice through normal metals with ease. However, this effect was severely limited by unpredictable Blue Emperor, and the side of despair was only able to inflict a very shallow gash. At that point, I realized that my opponent possessed extremely powerful defensive prowess. Hence, I dragged unpredictable Blue Emperor toward Corkscrew of Death to try and end the match using my Corkscrew of Death. Regardless of how powerful unpredictable Blue Emperor's defensive prowess was, it had to have an upper limit, and even a divine grade mecha would be damaged if it were to be struck head-on by my Corkscrew of Death. However, this was when unpredictable Blue Emperor began to display its combat prowess. Please take note here that unpredictable Blue Emperor had thrust its spear forward at this point, choosing to retaliate rather than to try and evade or resist the dragging force of my scythe blade. The most important thing to take note of here is the roar unleashed by the dragon head that appeared out of its chest. Even with my mecha to shield me, my mind went completely blank for an instant, which means that this was a spiritual attack, and that Sex Master Tang's spiritual power is superior to mine. A mecha battle could often be decided in an instant, and during the split second where my mind went blank, I reflexively tugged on the chain to throw unpredictable Blue Emperor off its intended course to buy myself some time. Tang Wuling listened carefully to Huang Sangyang's analysis, benefiting immensely in the process. It was very insightful to hear Huang Sangyang's thoughts during the battle, and the fact that Huang Sangyang had been forced to change his strategy so many times was a testament to how much pressure Tang Wuling had exerted upon him. Furthermore, he also elaborated in great detail on which areas both sides had performed well in, as well as in which areas the two had been found lacking. He really was a mad mecha scientist. Huang Sangyang was even willing to share some of the secrets of his mecha piloting piloting skills without making any selfish attempt to keep the information to himself. Of course, listening to him was one thing, putting his words into practice was another entirely different thing. This was the first clash where I came out second best. It seems that damage was inflicted on both sides, but the impact I was struck by was more severe, and the damage dealt to my mecha was also more apparent. My entire body was jolted during the clash, and that resulted in some fallacies in my control later on in the match. At this point, Huang Sangyang's commentary had already reached the part where the two mechas had separated for the first time. Only after the conclusion of the match did I learn from Sect Master Tang that I had fallen into his trap during this first clash. Tang Wuling couldn't help but chuckle upon hearing this. Indeed, that was when he had begun to set a trap for Huang Sangyang. The trap that he had set at the time would have been completely ineffective against a normal mecha pilot, as no normal mecha pilot could control their mecha to anywhere near Huang Sangyang's level of precision. Without that level of precision in his opponent's control, his trap would have been completely pointless. Sect Master Tang was struck by me, and I was sent flying by him. So overall, we were evenly matched. At the time, I habitually only remembered the exact location where I had inflicted the gash onto Unpredictable Blue Emperor, and that was the first mistake I made that ultimately contributed to my loss in the end. Please take note of the changes that Unpredictable Blue Emperor underwent during the rest of the battle. Huang Sangyang slowed down the replay as he spoke, and what came next was a rapid exchange of blows between both sides, during which neither side seemed to have gained an advantage. Even with the replay slowed down, it could still be seen just how rapid that sequence had been. At this point, my attention had been completely drawn to Sect Master Tang. In hindsight, the damage that my side of despair sustained had hampered my performance to a certain extent. Of course, that's not an excuse. The most damning mistake that I made during the battle was that I didn't pay attention to the changes that Unpredictable Blue Emperor had undergone. He drew a red circle on the screen and continued. Please turn your attention to the gash on Unpredictable Blue Emperor's waist. This is the key to my defeat. As I'm sure you've all figured out at this point, the gash is regenerating on its own, but I failed to notice this detail as I was too engrossed in the rapid pace of the battle. Here, I intentionally exposed a chink in my defense to attract Sect Master Tang's attention, then lashed out to make what I thought would be a lethal blow. Unbeknownst to me, the gash that I was targeting had already completely healed. In the end, I inflicted the exact same gash onto Unpredictable Blue Emperor while my Reaper of Despair was pierced through by the Blue Emperor Spear, and after that, I was bound by Sect Master Tang's other martial soul, which he hadn't used in the battle prior to this point. Thus, the battle concluded, and only after the match did I learn from Sect Master Tang how I had lost. Ultimately, I lost fair and square. Sect Master Tang has sacrificed all other pieces of equipment on his mecha, not because he doesn't want to or doesn't know how to use them. He had done so to minimize the weight of his mecha. On the surface, my Reaper of Despair appears to be far larger than Unpredictable Blue Emperor, but if I'm not mistaken, Unpredictable Blue Emperor is at least twice as heavy as my Reaper of Despair. This weight disparity is a direct result of the materials used. As for why Unpredictable Blue Emperor is able to self-regenerate, that's a secret of the Tang sect, so I won't say anything further about it. This is the conclusion of my commentary, and once again, I would like to apologize for disappointing everyone. After that, Huang Sangyang extended a deep bow toward the rostrum before making his way down from the competition platform. Everyone present in the stadium, including the people on the rostrum, were all enlightened by his expert analysis. Without his analysis, it would have felt like the spectacular match everyone had just witnessed was somehow incomplete. Now, even the most ordinary of spectators could understand just how many fine details that Huang Sangyang had to consider during the battle. Even though he had lost, the spectators were still very satisfied and certainly not disappointed. They had witnessed an extraordinary battle where both sides had displayed an incredible level of skill and execution. The final result wasn't just due to the disparity in the battle styles and powers of the two competitors. What had been even more important was the psychological warfare that had taken place. It was undoubtedly the case that Tang Wuling had won that war, which was why he was able to catch Huang Sangyang in his trap. If a rematch were to be held, it would really be difficult to say who would come out on top. Of course, this was only referring to the powers that both sides had already displayed. As for which side was actually more powerful, that would depend on how much each of them had kept in reserve up their sleeves. In any case, the Tang Sect Master had won the first match in this trial of 5 gods, and it meant that he already stood above all of the mecha pilots in the Douluo Empire. As for Tang Wuling himself, he was full of awe and admiration toward Huang Sangyang. As expected of the pillar of the empire, his commentary today would have undoubtedly evoked a passion in mechas within many young people who had watched the match. In reality, Tang Wuling had prepared very extensively for this mecha battle, and it was one that he had been determined to win. While it was true that virtually all high-grade mecha pilots were also high-grade soul masters, Tang Wuling had learned at a very early stage from Yu just how difficult it was for a divine-grade mecha pilot to also become a hyper Douluo. As such, there was a very low chance that his opponent would be a hyper Douluo. Huang Sangyang's mecha piloting skills could well be superior to Yu's, but there was still a disparity in power between the two. In order to win this mecha battle, Tang Wuling had even been prepared to display all of his trump cards. If Huang Sangyang hadn't fallen into his trap, then he would have been forced to use his time reversal domain, and perhaps even his Millennium White Clouds. With those two combined, he was confident that he would have a good chance of winning the match. In reality, never did he think that he would be able to secure victory in the trial of 5 gods. After all, he was facing an entire empire on his own, and that was simply far too unrealistic. As long as he could win 1 or 2 matches, that would be enough to make the Tang sect proud. After all, he was still only in his early 20s. Chapter 1323. If he had another 10 years, Tang Wuling was confident that he'd be able to secure victory in the entire trial of 5 gods. Ever since he had met his birth father, the goals he had set for himself had changed. As such, even though he had won this first match, he wasn't overly excited. This was all part of the plan. You're the best, boss. Shishi rushed over to Tang Wuling before giving him a huge hug. Let go of me, you're making a fool out of yourself, Tang Wuling said in a resigned manner. Shishi chortled, I knew it. We all knew that you would definitely be able to create a miracle. Tang Wuling rolled his eyes in response. Don't lie to me, that's not what you said when I first decided to take on this trial of 5 gods. Ahem, that was back then, things are different now. You were in seclusion for a few days, and at the rate you're going, that's more than enough for a huge breakthrough, Shishi said with a cheeky smile. Everyone else from Trek 6 Monsters also strode into the room, and even Dai Yuan had accompanied them. Congratulations, Wuling, Dai Yuan said as he extended a hand toward Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling shook his hand, but the wry smile on Dai Yuan's face clearly belied his words of congratulations. Ever since I was a kid, I had a goal that I was going to inherit the throne as the most powerful soul master in the entire empire, and rule with wisdom and aplomb. Now, you've dealt me a heavy blow, at least when it comes to cultivation. I had always thought that Brother Long would be the only one who could best me in cultivation, but you're also on that list now. I really don't know how you guys cultivate. Perhaps it really is all down to talent. As he looked at Tang Wuling, Dai Yuan was suddenly struck by the same impression as his father, which was that Dai Yuan seemed to be the one with the best eye in the entire family. If they had known that this would happen, they should have never allowed Tang Wuling to leave all those years. Perhaps if they had struck at the time, then Tang Wuling and Dai Yuan would already be a couple by now. Back then, Tang Wuling was nowhere near his current status, so there wouldn't be any issues if they had done some things to keep him in the Douluo Empire. You're far too kind, Your Highness. You're already very exceptional. It's just that our experiences and circumstances are different. We can focus more of our time and energy on cultivation, whereas you have to attend to much more important affairs, so that'll inevitably distract you. Dai Yuan grumbled. There's no need to mollycoddle me. You clearly still had time to spare to become such an outstanding mecha pilot on top of your cultivation. All right, go back and rest now. I hope to see you put on another spectacular display tomorrow. Oh, by the way, I won't forgive you if you don't sort out your issues with my sister. After that, Dai Yuan departed, and the smiling Douluo arrived as soon as he left. Hu Jie didn't say anything to Tang Wuling. All he did was give him a thumbs up. No one in the Douluo Empire had thought that Tang Wuling would be able to win even a single match in this trial of 5 gods. Yet he had created a miracle on just the first day. Yue Hangyu smiled and said, Paul Master Hu, you wouldn't be so surprised if you knew that Wuling is the champion in both the mecha and soul master disciplines of the Star Battle Net Interfederation competition. I don't think he's even human. Hu Jie chuckled. I'm very proud to have an inhuman sect master like him. You should have seen the look on NC's face. Haha, the old bastard was like a floundering fish. Having said that, after this match, the rest of the matches will most likely become more difficult. A puzzled look appeared in Tang Wulin's eyes upon hearing this. Hu Jie explained, the Douluo Empire still underestimated you in the end. Your age makes it very easy to make that mistake, and Dai Tianling doesn't actually want there to be any bad blood between the royal family and our Tang sect, so he chose Huang Zhangyang to participate in this mega battle. Huang Zhangyang is indeed a divine grade mecha pilot, but he's not a hyper Douluo, and when facing someone like you in the mecha battle, it's more important to possess immense power than exceptional mecha piloting skills. After this loss, the reputation of the entire Douluo Empire will hinge on the rest of the matches, so they're most likely going to send out their truly powerful beings. Hence, you have to be on your guard during the upcoming matches. Tang Wulin nodded in response. Huang Zhangyang had been chosen, not just for his skills as a mecha pilot, but also for his popularity and importance to the Douluo Empire. He was the most popular divine grade mecha pilot in the entire empire, but he may not necessarily be the most powerful one. Furthermore, he had made use of a set of unique advantages to win that battle. Huang Zhangyang hadn't underestimated Tang Wulin, but neither had he ever seen someone that would waste so much soul-refined metal on a single black mecha. As such, it could be said that he essentially lost under extraordinary circumstances. The next match would undoubtedly be more arduous than this first one, but that only made Tang Wulin more excited, and he was already looking forward to the second match. He was confident that as long as he performed to the best of his abilities, even if he were to lose, he would still benefit immensely. Even in the mega battle today, the skills that Huang Zhangyang had displayed and his analysis following the match had struck Tang Wulin with a lot of inspiration. Only by facing off against these exceptionally powerful beings could he continue to improve at a rapid rate. I'm going back to rest now. Much to everyone's surprise, the Tang sect master has secured victory in the first match of the Trial of Five Gods, and this piece of news had stunned the entire Douluo Empire. Over 15% of the entire empire's population had watched the live broadcast of this match, and over 40% of the population had tuned into the replay. What had originally been thought to be nothing more than a formality had concluded with an outcome that had stunned everyone in the Douluo Empire. In an empire that championed individual power and heroism above all else, what could be more astonishing than something like this? Thus, Tang sect master Tang Wulin quickly became a household name. The Tang sect had always held an extremely lofty status in the Douluo Empire, so it was very easy for Tang Wulin's popularity to gain traction. Furthermore, the Douluo Empire had done a very good job in promoting the event, and all of their promotional materials stated that Tang Wulin had accepted this trial after becoming the new Tang sect master to further strengthen the relationship between sect and empire. All of the revenue generated from the broadcasts and the sales of tickets would be donated to the Imperial Research Center to develop mechas and soul tools. This type of promotion naturally evoked within the citizens of the Douluo Empire a great deal of fondness toward this Tang sect master. Their patriotism naturally made them more inclined to support their empire, but due to how close the Tang sect was with the Douluo Empire, the outcomes of the matches were far less important in their eyes than how spectacular the matches were. After hearing Huang Zhangyang's commentary on the first mega battle, everyone was greatly enlightened and filled with praise and admiration toward this Tang sect master. At the same time, they were also very proud of Huang Zhangyang for the grace with which he had carried himself, even in defeat. Soon, all types of headlines were being released, and the general consensus was that even though the Tang sect master had won the match, Huang Zhangyang had actually lost due to rather extraordinary circumstances. There were some experienced and knowledgeable individuals who had identified the fact that Tang Wulin's unpredictable blue emperor had been entirely constructed from soul-refined metals, so in the eyes of the empire's citizens, this had been an evenly matched and extremely enthralling battle. Several of the empire's divine grade mecha pilots had also expressed an interest to spar with Tang Wulin as well. Thus, the popularity of the Trial of Five Gods spiked at a rapid rate, and the empire had already earned an astronomical sum in revenue from ticket sales and broadcast commissions for the upcoming second match. Chapter 1324. Thus, the popularity of the Trial of Five Gods continued to increase, and even the instigator, Dai Tianling, hadn't anticipated such a scenario. Initially, only 60% of the tickets had been sold for the second match, but following the first match, all of the remaining tickets were quickly swept up, and the tickets to relatively good seats had been bid up to astronomical prices. Second only to the empire itself, the Tang sect was the main beneficiary to this situation. The Tang sect's business covered a huge scope in the Douluo Empire, including areas such as construction of infrastructure, research and development of soul tools, etc. Within just a single day, the number of orders received by the Tang sect increased by 10%, which resulted in an astronomical sum of increased revenue. Even a super organization like the Spirit Pagoda was extremely envious of this. Virtually everyone in the entire empire was discussing the Trial of Five Gods, while some of the young women in the empire had their attention focused on something different. Following the first match, both Tang Wulin and Huang Zhangyang had emerged from their mechas, thereby revealing their appearances. After attaining a spiritual domain, Tang Wulin no longer required any disguises, so he had appeared before all of the young women in the empire in his full incredibly handsome glory. The combination of his handsome features, clear and gentle eyes, exceptional figure, and incredible powers was made even more compelling by the fact that he was only in his early 20s. Thus, Tang Wulin quickly became an idol among the young women in the empire. Tang Wulin's looks quickly became the talk of the town, and newspapers with pictures of Tang Wulin taken during the first match sold like hotcakes. What was even more amusing was that the number of female applicants for job positions in the Tang sect had increased dramatically. This was all an unexpected yet pleasant surprise. At the very least, it quickly made all of the major powers in the Douluo Empire aware of the Tang sect's new sect master. What was most astonishing to everyone was that he was only in his 20s. Just how had he cultivated to have reached his current level at such a young age? The past sect masters of the Tang sect had virtually all been limit Douluos. This was a reflection of the unfathomable power that the number one sect in the world possessed. However, there were very few past Tang sect masters who had achieved so much at such a young age. The most renowned Tang sect masters were the Spirit Ice Douluo Huo Yuao and its founder, Thousand-Hand Douluo Tangsan. Now, the Tang sect had another extremely young yet outrageously powerful sect master. Did that mean it was set for another resurgence? News of how the Tang sect was being oppressed in the Douluo Federation had traveled to the Douluo Empire, and that had definitely had a negative impact on the Tang sect. When it was made known to everyone that this new Tang sect master was only in his 20s, many major powers and merchants had automatically written him off. However, following this first match in the Trial of Five Gods, they were forced to reevaluate him. This was like a chemical reaction that was only intensifying as time passed. Father, Dai Yuna made her way over to Dai Tianling with a wide smile and began to gently massage his shoulders. I can already tell from that smile of yours that you have some kind of ulterior motive. Dai Tianling harumphed. He was still very angry about how Dai Yuna had declared that she was willing to become a concubine, but after seeing his daughter again, he simply couldn't bring himself to be mad at her. Dai Yuna giggled. Don't be mad. I only said what I did the other day as a spur of the moment thing. I'm not actually going to become someone's concubine. Dai Tianling's expression immediately eased slightly upon hearing this. Good. I don't ever want to hear you say anything like that again. Dai Yuna continued. Father, Tang Wulin is really outstanding, right? I bet you didn't expect the outcome of this first match. Dai Tianling's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, and as the emperor, he couldn't just lie through his teeth, so he nodded and said, he is indeed quite impressive. Otherwise, I wouldn't have agreed for him to become my son-in-law. It's just that he doesn't know what's good for him. Humph. Dai Yuna chuckled. Don't be mad, father. I've known Tang Wulin for a long time, and I also know who he likes, but there seems to be some kind of conflict between the two of them. No matter how deep their love for one another is, their prolonged separation is bound to take a toll on their relationship, so I think I still have a very good chance. Father, if I convince him to stay, the entire Tang sect will be more inclined toward our empire, right? On top of that, surely the performance he put on today is enough to earn the acknowledgement of the citizens of our empire. How are you going to convince him to stay? Dai Tianling grumbled. Dai Yuna lowered her voice slightly and replied, I'll need your help to create an opportunity for me. A person is always most complacent when they're at their most triumphant point. What are you plotting? Don't go doing something that'll embarrass our entire imperial family. A sense of foreboding suddenly welled up in Dai Tianling's heart. A faint blush appeared on Dai Yuna's face. Father, you have to make an investment to see a return. If you don't invest in your daughter, you won't. Stop. What is all this nonsense you're spouting? I'm warning you, Dai Yuna, you're a princess, and the reputation of our royal family is the most important thing at all times. Don't say anything else. Just get out. Dai Tianling was truly enraged. He could clearly tell that his daughter was up to no good again. Dai Yuna pouted in a pitiable manner. Father doesn't love me anymore. Dai Tianling yelled. You've only become like this because I've spoiled you too much. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. I'm warning you. If you do something that brings disgrace to our imperial family, you won't get away with it like you always do with everything else. Dai Yuna faltered slightly upon hearing this before tears began to flow down her face. In her memory, her father had never scolded her in such a harsh manner before. Dai Tianling was immediately struck by a pang of guilt and regret at the sight of his daughter's tears, and he was just about to say something, but Dai Yuna had already rushed away with tears streaming from her eyes. Dai Tianling picked up an ornament on his table in an enraged manner, but he couldn't bring himself to smash it in the end, and placed it back onto the table. He grumbled to himself in a furious manner. This is all that little bastard's fault. Humph. I'm going to teach him a good lesson in the next few matches. The second match of the Trial of Five Gods was the Battle of Soul Spirits. After awakening from his meditation in the morning, Tang Wuling could feel that his essence, energy, and spirit had all returned to prime condition, and he felt just as full of energy as he did after making every major breakthrough in his cultivation rank. The mega battle that had taken place the day before had been extremely satisfying for him. He had racked his brains to combat Huang Tangyang, and he had constantly been in a state of extreme concentration, taking in every single fine detail while also maximizing all of the advantages that he possessed. He had already asked the smiling Douluo to get Huang Tangyang's contact details for him. Prior to leaving the Douluo Empire, he was determined to see just how powerful Huang Tangyang was in his divine braid mecha. Only by putting more pressure on himself could he continue to increase his rate of improvement. After doing some washing up, he emerged from his room and headed to the cafeteria. Along the way, all of the Tang sect disciples that he encountered would greet him with respectful smiles. It wasn't that they hadn't respected him in the past, it was just that not many people knew of him, and he didn't have much authority. However, the victory he had secured the day before belonged not just to himself, but also the entire Tang sect. All of the Tang sect's disciples were immensely proud of him. How could they not admire someone who was opposing the might of an entire empire on his own? Chapter 1325. As the Tang sect vehicle drove toward the sports stadium, Tang Wuling discovered that the traffic was a lot more congested than the day before. There were clearly more people on the streets, and in particular, many people were crowding around the Tang sect vehicle in an attempt to see the Tang sect master at close quarters for themselves. Among these people, there was a clear predominant female demographic, and some of them were holding banners with his name written on them. Tang Wuling had even seen some strange banners such as one that read, "The Tang sect belongs to the Douluo Empire. Please stay, Sect Master Tang." A surge of warmth flowed through Tang Wuling's heart at the sight of these banners, and he found the citizens of the Douluo Empire to be very adorable. In contrast with the Douluo Federation, which was renouncing and oppressing the Tang sect at every turn, he felt far more at home here. The Tang sect would truly have made a resurgence once they became just as popular in the Federation, and he was confident that that day would arrive. Hu Jie was sitting beside Tang Wuling, and he smiled as he said, "You seem to be very popular, Sect Master. You were in a mecha yesterday, so you're most likely going to attract even more attention today." A wry smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. "I have no confidence in today's battle at all. I wonder if their attitude toward me will change if I lose." Hu Jie said, "Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Everyone is already astonished that you won yesterday's match. If you win this match as well, His Majesty will probably jump out of his seat. At the very least, yesterday's battle proves that you're the best mecha pilot in the entire empire. Isn't that enough for someone of your age? You've already secured more than enough glory for the Tang sect, so take on the rest of the Trial of Five Gods without any inhibitions, and really enjoy yourself. I understand that you've agreed to accept this trial mostly for a chance to improve yourself, and I think that's a very good mindset. In that case, there's no need to worry too much about the outcome. Perform to the best of your abilities, and continue to improve through the matches. That's all that you need to do." Tang Wuling nodded in response. The smiling Douluo's words had somewhat settled his nerves. Indeed, he should enjoy this Trial of Five Gods. Perhaps at the conclusion of the trial, he would undergo another evolution. With Imperial vehicles clearing the way, the Tang sect vehicle finally arrived at the Imperial Sports Stadium. In the instant that Tang Wuling got out of the car, he was greeted by a barrage of screams, cheers, and some words of abuse. It seemed that he was a slightly polarizing figure, but also definitely a very popular one. Instead of making his way into the sports stadium right away, he turned around to the people who had gathered to see him, and extended a slight bow. "Thank you all for coming out to see me." His words were very calm and concise, but the commotion ringing out from the crowd instantly died down, and everyone felt as if his voice had sounded right inside their minds. This was a very peculiar feeling. They felt as if a stream of warm water had flowed through their brains, suddenly calming them down and striking them with an indescribable sense of comfort. All of their excitement and frustration quickly gave way to calmness, and this was a feeling that they had never experienced before. They couldn't help but focus their attention on Tang Wuling, and as they praised his handsome features and listened to his voice reverberating in their minds, all of them began to see him through new eyes. The calming effect of spiritual power was one of its many applications. It could put one in a healthier mental state, and it was especially effective on those with conditions such as depression and anxiety. Tang Wuling had injected his spiritual power into his voice as a way to reciprocate all of the people who had come out to see him, regardless of whether they supported or despised him. That wasn't important. Everyone had their own circumstances, and Tang Wuling would much rather believe that all people were kind at heart. After that, he turned and made his way into the sports stadium, and only then did the crowd slowly return to their senses. What just happened? Why did I feel so relaxed and calm after hearing his voice? He's so handsome. He's even more handsome than he is on TV, and his voice is so soothing as well. I think I've fallen in love with him. Where's the guy that was selling his ticket before? I accept your price. Hurry up and hand over the ticket. I changed my mind. I'm going to keep the ticket and watch Sect Master Tang's match myself. Just hearing his voice was such a fantastic experience. How can I sell this ticket for money? I'm sorry, everyone, but if I miss out on this match, I'm sure I'm going to regret my decision for the rest of my life. I really shouldn't have insulted him just now. Sect Master Tang is only here to strengthen the relationship between the Tang sect and our Douluo Empire, and the Trial of Five Gods is really only a series of sparring matches. I'm sure all of the matches will be extremely spectacular regardless of the outcome. That's not what you said before. You were ranting yesterday about how disgraceful it was that our empire was losing to a mere sect. Did I say that? I don't remember. I don't know why, but after seeing Sect Master Tang just now, I suddenly feel so calm, and all the resentment I harbored toward him has disappeared. Did you also hear his voice just now? Why is it that we were still able to hear his voice so clearly even though we're standing so far away? I guess this is just one of the many abilities that set powerful beings like Sect Master Tang apart from people like us. Tang Wuling's greeting toward the crowd was quickly sensationalized by everyone who had gathered to see him, and word of the seemingly insignificant interaction spread like wildfire. At this point, Tang Wuling had already made his way into the resting area, and he calmly reviewed the strategy that he had prepared in his mind. He had already made ample preparations, and with his physical constitution, the mega battle from the day before hadn't had any residual negative impact on him, so he was still in his best condition. There was still half an hour until the commencement of the match, but the entire sports stadium was already packed to the rafters, and it was so lively and bustling that even Dai Tianling was quite startled when he first arrived. Such a scene was normally only reserved for the grand finals of important sporting events held in the Empire. It seems that the spectacular battle that had taken place the day before had left a very strong impression on the spectators. NC strode onto the rostrum alongside Dai Tianling, and the former's expression remained completely calm and neutral. "What do you think of Tang Wuling's chances of securing victory today, teacher?" Dai Tianling asked. He had asked the same question the day before, and NC had replied with 30%, only for Tang Wuling to give him a resounding slap on the face by winning the match. A faint smile appeared on NC's face, and he replied, "If you ask me, he only has a 20% chance at most today. Soul spirits are different from mechas. At the very least, the mega battle was held on equal footing as both sides were using black mechas, and Tang Wuling even had an advantage as his mecha was completely constructed from soul-refined metals." Chapter 1326. However, that advantage won't be replicated in this soul spirit battle. The level of power of a soul spirit is strongly correlated with the powers of the soul master, and there's a vast disparity in power between soul Douluos and hyper Douluo. Generally speaking, a soul master will normally obtain their last soul spirit when they progress to the titled Douluo level, and that will also be their most powerful soul spirit. Tang Wuling is quite exceptional for his age, but he still hasn't reached the titled Douluo level yet. A perplexed look appeared on Dai Tianling's face, but according to my knowledge, many titled Douluos will obtain a powerful soul spirit when they become a soul sage, and that soul spirit will provide soul rings for them until they reach the titled Douluo level. NC chuckled. That is indeed true under most circumstances, but Tang Wuling's opponent for today isn't an ordinary titled Douluo. I personally chose his opponent for this match, and you'll soon see for yourself that Tang Wuling doesn't stand much of a chance. Tang Wuling seems to possess a very powerful dragon bloodline that can heavily impact other soul masters with dragon martial souls. Long Yue fell victim to that several years ago, so on this occasion, I made sure to choose a soul master without a dragon-type martial soul. In my opinion, this match most likely won't last very long. Oh, have you become a clairvoyant overnight, Principal NC? A mocking voice suddenly rang out, and NC didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. There was only one person who dared to speak to him like this in the presence of the Emperor. The smiling Douluo sat down on Dai Tiangling's other side, and the presence of his enormous belly and backside immediately struck Dai Tianling with a somewhat claustrophobic sensation. Your Majesty, Hu Jie greeted with a smile. Welcome. How is Tang Wulin's condition today? Has the mecha battle from yesterday affected him much? Mecha battles were generally less taxing for soul masters, but a battle that was as mentally intensive as the one that had taken place the day before would also be quite grueling. Rest assured, Your Majesty, our sect master has recovered more than adequately. By the way, did I just hear someone predict a quick defeat for our sect master? Who's going to be his opponent for today? The smiling Douluo hadn't been made aware of what opponents Tang Wulin was going to face in advance. Dai Tianling was solely in charge of choosing his opponents, and he had chosen to delegate that duty to NC today. NC suddenly smiled and proposed, how about we make a bet, fatty? The smiling Douluo shot a glance at him. What's the bet? NC replied, if I recall correctly, there's a place owned by your Tang sect over at the Federation where all types of precious immortal plants can be found. If you lose, then I'll get an opportunity to pick an immortal plant from there. Of course, it may not be me that picks the plant. It could be my disciple as well. The smiling Douluo faltered slightly upon hearing this before immediately shaking his head. No way. The Ice Fire Yin Yang Well was extremely important to the Tang sect. There was no way an outsider could be granted access to it. When did you become such a coward? NC goaded in a mocking voice. The smiling Douluo chuckled coldly. Have I become a coward or have you become an idiot? I'm nothing more than a branch supervisor. I have no right to grant anyone access to that place. So what am I supposed to be betting here? NC continued. Then why don't you ask your sect master? He should be able to make the decision. I'm going to be putting something on the line that's just as precious. The smiling Douluo's expression remained unchanged. Oh. And what could that be? NC seemed to have already made a decision in advance, and he smiled as he replied, a holy radiant dragon crystal. How about that? The smiling Douluo was astonished to hear this. A holy radiant dragon crystal? Did such a thing actually exist? This was the first thought that sprang to his mind, but he then quickly decided that such a thing had to exist as there was no way a man of NC's status would make a joke about such an important matter. He turned to NC with a meaningful expression. Are you sure? NC nodded in response. Positive. Even though NC hadn't said this himself, Hu Jie knew that a holy radiant dragon crystal had to be extremely important to him. It was extremely difficult for a soul master to become a limit Douluo. Only a combination of an unimaginable amount of hard work and countless incredible opportunities could give rise to such an unfathomably powerful being. Due to the emergence of soul spirits, modern soul masters were able to progress faster in their cultivation than soul masters of ancient times, but their cultivation foundations weren't actually as stable on average. Even so, there were definitely less than 10 limit Douluo in total on the entire Douluo star. It was undoubtedly the case that this holy radiant dragon crystal had to have played an important role in NC's progression to the limit Douluo level. Perhaps this crystal would only be effective for those with the holy radiant dragon martial soul, but there were countless soul masters in the Tang sect, and it would definitely benefit the Tang sect immensely to get their hands on such an extraordinary treasure. Furthermore, a holy radiant dragon crystal really was comparable with an immortal plant. I'll contact the sect master. This was a very important matter, and the smiling Douluo immediately stood up before walking off the rostrum. NC smiled as he looked on at Hu Jie's departing figure, and Dai Tianling could clearly sense that there was a rather slight element to his smile. So this had to be a trap. Shortly thereafter, Tang Wulin closed his soul communicator with a faint smile on his face. A holy radiant dragon crystal, eh? That's truly an extraordinary item. The dragon god had 9 children, and the light dragon king was one of the most powerful of its offspring. A holy radiant dragon was a type of lightning attribute giant dragon with the closest bloodline to the light dragon king, and they had once stood at the pinnacle of the food chain back when the dragon clan had been the rulers of the continent. A holy radiant dragon crystal was truly a priceless treasure. Tang Wulin possessed the golden dragon king bloodline, so he didn't care much for this holy radiant dragon crystal himself, but it could be extremely useful for his friends. Yue's Hengyu's holy attribute powers and Shishi's time space dragon martial soul would surely both be able to benefit immensely from this item, and if it were used as the core for one of their future suits of forward battle armor, that would definitely significantly bolster the power of that suit of battle armor. The fact that NC was willing to offer something so precious in a bet was a clear indication that he was very confident in Tang Wulin's opponent. However, unbeknownst to NC, Tang Wulin was also very confident in this match, even more so than he had been for the mega battle. The trial of 5 gods had been proposed by the Douluo Empire, but the sequence of the 5 matches was decided by Tang Wulin. He was confident in his chances in the mega battle, but that confidence wasn't absolute. If he lost in the mega battle, then he would need to make a comeback in the second battle. So unbeknownst to everyone, Tang Wulin was actually the most confident in this match. As for the bet, it really was an easy decision to accept. Even if he did lose, NC wouldn't be getting much out of this as virtually all of the immortal plants over 100,000 years of age were currently with Tang Wulin, so there was basically nothing there. In contrast, just the mere thought of a holy radiant dragon crystal was getting him very excited. Right at this moment, a bell chimed to notify everyone of the imminent commencement of the match. Tang Wulin rose to his feet and strode out of the resting area. In the sports stadium, with Dai Tianling as the witness, the smiling Douluo and NC sealed their bet on the rostrum. On the surface, both of them seemed to be very confident. At this moment, the announcer declared, the second match of the trial of 5 gods will be the soul spirit battle. Allow me to introduce to everyone the basic rules of the soul spirit battle. Firstly, it must be established that the soul spirit battle didn't exist during ancient times as soul spirits were invented by the legendary forefather of our Douluo Empire, Spirit Douluo Huo Yuao. It was his revolutionary invention that ensured soul masters didn't fall into obscurity and continue to exist today. Hence, this battle will pay homage to the legendary Huo Yuao. During this battle, the only participants can be the soul spirits of the 2 competing soul masters. Furthermore, the soul masters can enhance their soul spirits to a certain degree, but can't directly participate in the battle, which means enhancement skills can be used, but not directly offensive or defensive skills. The match will conclude once one side's soul spirits are all defeated. The rules were quite simple, and they had been accepted by both sides in advance. Chapter 1327. Now then, please welcome our 2 competitors. The representative for our Douluo Empire today will be. The announcer intentionally paused here to build suspense. The supervisor of the Douluo Empire's Spirit Pagoda branches and Spirit Pagoda branch chairman, Zhang Yang. Zhang Diang's Douluo title was Infernal Flame, and he was the most powerful being in the Spirit Pagoda in the Douluo Empire. The announcement that he was going to represent the Empire in this soul spirit battle immediately sent a massive stir running through the spectator stands. Infernal Flame Douluo Zhang Diang was a vastly renowned figure in the Douluo Empire, and as a Spirit Pagoda branch chairman, his soul spirits were naturally extremely powerful. Just like the smiling Douluo, he was also a rank 98 hyper Douluo, but Hu Jie was slightly superior to him in terms of overall combat prowess. In a sense, the 2 of them had been long-standing rivals. Hu Jie's expression clearly changed slightly upon hearing this name, and he turned to NC with a hint of rage in his eyes. This is the man you chose. He can represent the Empire. NC replied in a calm manner. Why not? Regardless of whether it's the Tang sect or the Spirit Pagoda, both are organizations in our Empire, so they're part of our Empire. Even you're eligible to participate in this trial as long as your participation is approved by the Empire. Do you think there's anyone else more suitable than Zhang Diang to participate in this soul spirit battle? I had to do a lot of convincing before he agreed to compete on behalf of our Empire. Only by defeating him can your sect master prove that he's number 1 in soul spirits in our Douluo Empire. Hu Jie's breathing became noticeably heavier upon hearing this. Only an idiot would believe what NC had just said. Tang Wulin had just destroyed the Spirit Pagoda headquarters in the Dou Spirit Empire and declared war on the Spirit Pagoda. The Spirit Pagoda was definitely more than eager to strike back at Tang Wulin. If anything, Zhang Diang was most likely the one who had to convince NC to let him participate in this trial. This was undoubtedly the person that the smiling Douluo least wanted to see. Infernal Flame Douluo Zhang Diang was a truly powerful being, and certainly not someone the likes of the deceased heir Douluo Huotao could compare with. Furthermore, Zhang Diang was also a vice chairman of the entire Spirit Pagoda, which ranked him alongside someone like Heavenly Phoenix Douluo Leng Yaoshu. Hu Jie had always held a slight edge over Zhang Diang with his twin body martial souls, but Zhang Diang's soul spirits were extremely powerful, so Hu Jie wasn't able to do anything to him. Just that fact alone was a clear indication of just how powerful Tang Wulin's opponent for today was. Zhang Diang's soul spirits had left Hu Jie with a very strong impression, and in contrast, Tang Wulin had only just progressed to the soul Douluo level, so he would only have 3 soul spirits at most, which placed him at an absolute disadvantage against Zhang Diang. As such, his chances of winning this battle were very slim. Most of the Douluo Empire's citizens weren't aware of the conflict between the Tang sect and the Spirit Pagoda, but they had virtually all heard of Zhang Diang. Infernal Flame Douluo Zhang Diang had been the supervisor of the Douluo Empire's Spirit Pagoda's branches for 27 years, and he possessed tremendous powers, as well as a steely personality. He was one of the most powerful and revered beings in the entire Spirit Pagoda, and even Chairman Kyangi Dongfang referred to him as an equal. The Tang sect's status was clearly superior to that of the Spirit Pagoda and the Douluo Empire, but they were unable to truly crush the Spirit Pagoda into the ground, and Zhang Diang was one of the primary reasons behind that. Under his leadership, the Spirit Pagoda had established a very solid foundation in the Douluo Empire. As the lights in the sports stadium dimmed, Zhang Diang appeared at one of the entrances to the stadium. Under the illumination of the bright searchlight, he was revealed to be an extremely handsome middle-aged man. His hair was impeccably arranged, and he wore a black robe with gold embroidered edges. He was completely expressionless as he strode forward with his hands clasped behind his back, and he immediately drew the attention of all the spectators present. Next, let's put our hands together for Sect Master Tang. I'm sure we're going to be treated to another fiercely contested battle today. Tang Wulin made his way into the stadium under the illumination of another bright searchlight beam, and his white robes created a stark contrast with Zhang Diang's black attire. Tang Wulin's brows had furrowed involuntarily upon hearing Zhang Diang being introduced while he was in the waiting area. What were the Douluo Empire's intentions? Were they using this Spirit Pagoda branch chairman to target him? Was the Douluo Empire trying to make a display of power to the Tang sect? There were many important implications behind this situation, and Tang Wulin had to tread with caution. In any case, it was extremely important for him to secure victory in this battle. No one was going to consider his age and make excuses for him. In the eyes of the vast majority of people, this was a battle between the Tang sect master and the Spirit Pagoda branch chairman. If he were to lose, then that would be the equivalent of the Tang sect losing to the Spirit Pagoda. This was truly an underhanded tactic being employed by the Douluo Empire, and even Dai Tianling was currently appraising NC with a hint of discontent in his eyes. The trial of 5 gods was already very unfair to Tang Wulin, and the fact that they were now getting the Spirit Pagoda involved was making it far too obvious that this was not just a friendly match between sect and empire. This was not what he wanted to see. After all, the Douluo Empire was closer with the Tang sect, and it really wouldn't be worth it to drive a wedge between the Tang sect and the empire over something like this. NC's lips trembled as he transmitted his voice toward Dai Tianling, upon which an enlightened look appeared on Dai Tianling's face, and he smiled as he gave NC a slight nod. Hu Jie was keeping an eye on the two of them this entire time, and he knew that NC had to have an objective behind getting Zhang Diang to participate in this match. Aside from doing this to exert power over the Tang sect, there had to be some other objective, and this objective was most likely not a harmful one to the Tang sect. Under the current circumstances, this was the extent of what he could analyze. At this point, both participants had already strode onto the competition platform, and the first thing that Tang Wulin sensed from Zhang Diang was a powerful yet peculiar aura. It seemed to be as hot as fire, but also as cold as ice at the same time, and this conflicting dual-faceted aura was very unsettling. Zhang Diang was also appraising Tang Wulin. He had watched Tang Wulin's match against Huang Sangyang the day before, but he still couldn't help but be in awe of just how young Tang Wulin was now that they were meeting in person. He was truly far too young. How could the Tang sect allow someone so young to become their sect master? This was truly perplexing to him. Tang Wulin had indeed displayed powerful abilities, but that was only in a mecha battle. In the eyes of Zhang Diang, a young man in his early 20s definitely wouldn't have the emotional maturity to be able to lead such a powerful sect. Could it be that the Tang sect really had no one else? He had heard about what had happened in the Dou Spirit Empire, but he didn't know that Tang Wulin had been the perpetrator. All of the Spirit Pagoda survivors of that attack could only recall that their branch had been completely destroyed by a Crimson Dragon, and they had no idea that it was the Tang sect master that had been responsible for the attack. Currently, all news surrounding the Spirit Pagoda had been completely sealed off by the Dou Spirit Empire, and all types of rumors concerning collusion between the Spirit Pagoda and the Holy Spirit cult had surfaced in the Federation. At a time like this, why had the Tang sect master come to the Douluo Empire? One couldn't help but wonder if this Tang sect master was somehow related to the incident that had taken place in the Dou Spirit Empire. Chapter 1328. After contacting Kyangi Dongfang, Zhang Diang received the instructions to try and ascertain the new Tang sect master's purpose for visiting the Douluo Empire, as well as to foil his plans as much as possible. As such, when NC approached Zhang Diang and asked him to participate in this trial of 5 gods, he agreed without any hesitation. At the same time, NC had consoled him by telling him that the Empire still had trust in the Spirit Pagoda. From NC's words, Zhang Diang could sense that the Empire seemed to be trying to strike at the Tang sect to keep them in check, and that came as quite a relief to him. He had already made ample preparations for this battle. If he could defeat Tang Wulin, then the Spirit Pagoda's status would definitely be significantly elevated, thereby granting them a stable foothold in the Douluo Empire. Please get ready, Sect Master Tang, Branch Chairman Zhang. You may release your soul spirits in 10 seconds. As this announcement was made, the entire venue quickly fell silent. As soon as the announcer had declared the Douluo Empire representative for this match, the spectators had become very excited. This was essentially a match between the Tang sect and the Spirit Pagoda, which was very intriguing. Just who would secure the final victory in this clash between the two super organizations? Everyone was filled with anticipation. If the Tang sect could secure this victory, then their new sect master would undoubtedly rise to the peak of his popularity. However, if he were to lose, then this match could have rather negative implications for the Tang sect. Due to the increased stakes, this second match was clearly more important than the first match, and was undoubtedly going to be an even more fiercely contested one. The countdown had already begun, and Tang Wulin's eyes lit up with battle intent. Come at me, Infernal Flame Douluo Zhang Diang. 10, 9, 3, 2, 1. As soon as the countdown concluded, soul rings emerged from beneath the feet of both competitors in unison. 8 soul rings emerged beneath Tang Wulin, while Zhang Diang naturally had 9. Tang Wulin's soul ring configuration was truly a sight to behold. Following the first 4 black soul rings was a greenish golden soul ring, followed by 3 orange golden soul rings. Zhang Diang was given quite a fright by the sight of the 3 orange golden soul rings. As one of the most high-ranking figures in the Spirit Pagoda, he was naturally aware of what an orange golden soul ring entailed. The earliest orange golden soul ring to appear was Spirit Ice Douluo Huo's first orange golden soul ring, and a soul spirit of this caliber was something that the Spirit Pagoda couldn't create. This indicated that Tang Wulin had at least one great beast level soul spirit, and that was a slightly alarming discovery for Zhang Diang. The number of great beasts that remained in this world could virtually be counted on 2 hands, so it was quite incredible that this Tang sect master had gotten his hands on a great beast soul spirit. This was also the first time that NC and Dai Tianling had seen Tang Wulin's soul rings, and they were also quite surprised by the sight of the greenish golden and orange golden soul rings. He has a great beast soul spirit. NC turned to Hu Jie in a stunned manner. No wonder the Tang sect had dared to accept this trial. He certainly was full of surprises. Tang Wulin had a total of 3 orange golden soul rings, which would undoubtedly significantly enhance his powers. As such, it was no wonder that he was able to match even titled Douluo in battle as a soul Douluo. However, what was the most striking to powerful beings of NC and Zhang Diang's caliber was Tang Wulin's 5th soul ring. That greenish golden soul ring was far too special. As everyone was aware, the colors of soul rings consisted of white, yellow, purple, black, red, orange golden, and the legendary white golden. Orange golden soul rings could only be bestowed upon soul masters by great beasts over 200,000 years of age, and the legendary white golden soul ring could only be provided by a million-year-old beast. Orange golden soul rings have popped up very occasionally during the past 10,000 years, but it was said that only Spirit Ice Douluo Huo had ever possessed a white golden soul ring. Perhaps Thousand Hands Douluo Tang San had also come into possession of such a soul ring, but it had never been confirmed. There were also people who proclaimed that million-year-old soul rings were golden rather than white golden, and there was no way to verify the claims of either side as million-year-old soul rings were simply far too rare. However, this greenish golden soul ring that Tang Wulin possessed was definitely one that had never been seen before. Perhaps it wouldn't have been as astonishing if it had only been a green soul ring, but the gold intermingled with the green suggested that this was an extremely regal soul ring. On the Douluo continent, all powerful soul beasts, martial souls, soul rings, soul bones, and virtually everything else of substantial power was entirely or partially golden in color. As such, this greenish golden soul ring was truly astonishing to everyone. Just what could it possibly entail? In contrast, Zhang Diang's soul ring configuration was a lot more normal, consisting of 5 blacks and 4 reds. That's right, he possessed the most red soul rings that Tang Wulin had ever seen in any single being. one more than even smiling Douluo who generally speaking, red soul rings were the absolute limit for normal soul masters, and even someone as powerful and with as lofty a status as Jiang Diang didn't have an orange golden soul ring. As such, the first feeling he was struck by upon seeing Tang Wulin's orange golden soul rings was envy. If a freakish prodigy like him were allowed to flourish, he would most definitely grow to become a major thorn in the Spirit Pagoda side. Thinking back, Atlas Douluo Yanming had dominated the Spirit Pagoda for close to 100 years, and this new Tang sect master seemed to be on track to reach even greater heights. Tang Wulin raised his right hand before pointing a finger forward, and a burst of golden light immediately erupted from his fingertip before hurtling directly toward Jiang Diang like a bolt of lightning. As the streak of golden light landed on the ground, the spectators were immediately able to identify it as a golden dragon. That's right, it was a dragon rather than a snake. It possessed very unique dragon characteristic. Even though it had no wings, there were horns on its head, and it had 5 clawed limbs. Its entire body was covered in fine golden scales, and it was over 15 meters in length. Its entire body was shimmering with golden light, and it was quite clear that this was no ordinary soul spirit. This was naturally none other than Gold Zorn. As Tang Wulin had progressed in his cultivation rank, he had very rarely used his soul spirits in battle as he much preferred honing his own powers. However, that didn't mean that his soul spirits weren't constantly growing alongside him, and the one that had changed the most was undoubtedly Gold Zorn. Even Tang Wulin didn't know how it had become like this. As opposed to the traditional winged giant dragon, Gold Zorn had become a 5-clawed golden dragon, and its scales were very similar to those of Tang Wulin's, except they were thicker and heavier. After it had grown those horns on its head, it had gone into hibernation to undergo another evolution, and it had only reawakened on the way here to the Star Luo Empire. Gold Zorn's eyes had already completely turned golden, and looking at it now, who could possibly imagine that it had once been a defective soul spirit? Gold Zorn's aura stemmed directly from Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon King bloodline aura, and as soon as it appeared, it let loose a thunderous dragon's roar before charging directly toward Jiang Diang. Jiang Diang had also released his own soul spirit, and he wasn't all that surprised to see Gold Zorn. In his eyes, this was nothing more than a second-rate dragon soul spirit, as evidenced by its lack of wings. A giant beast erupted from Jiang Diang's body, and the beast was around 10 meters in length and roughly 4 meters tall. It had a powerful muscle-bound body that was covered in blue fur, and it had the head of a lion, the body of a baboon, and the sharp claws of a tiger. It possessed the attributes of many ferocious beasts in a single package. Blue flames were burning over its entire body, and it was appraising Gold Zorn in a cold manner. All of a sudden, it let loose a ferocious roar before springing forth at an incredible speed. As it did so, its body instantly turned transparent, but the blue flames burning around it only burned with even greater intensity. The soul spirit that was most synergistic with the soul master would always be one that was the same as their martial soul. To put it in simpler terms, if Tang Wulin's soul spirit was the blue silver emperor, then its synergy with his blue silver emperor martial soul would be unmatched. It was just that there was no way for him to find another blue silver emperor. This was the case for Jiang Diang's soul spirit. Chapter 1329. Jiang Diang hailed from a family that had held high-ranking positions in the Spirit Pagoda for many generations, so his first soul spirit was one that had been painstakingly sourced for him by his family. A normal soul master could obtain multiple soul spirits as their cultivation rank progressed, and the later soul spirits would definitely become more and more powerful. However, the soul spirit that remained with the soul master for the longest time would always be their first soul spirit, and if a soul spirit possessed sufficient evolutionary potential, then it would improve alongside the soul master. This was the type of soul spirits that soul masters liked the most, and they were referred to as bonded soul spirits. This soul spirit, which was the infernal flame beast, was the same as Jiang Diang's martial soul, as well as his bonded soul spirit. In reality, Tang Wulin's Gold Zorn could also count as his bonded soul spirit. It had grown alongside him, and evolved to this point from the nourishment of the Gold Dragon King bloodline. All of its inherent flaws had been ironed out over time, and it was constantly undergoing metamorphosis. However, it had become like this as it didn't possess a dragon-type bloodline to begin with, so it was technically a mutated beast that had integrated the Golden Dragon King bloodline. From their outward appearances alone, both soul spirits were extremely eye-catching to the spectators, and their battle soon quickly commenced as they charged toward one another. Tang Wulin and Jiang Diang both stood in the distance, instructing their soul spirits through their spiritual connections with them. As such, this was still a battle between soul masters, except the soul spirits were being used as tools to facilitate the battle. The infernal flame beast was extraordinarily fast and reached Gold Zorn in virtually the blink of an eye. It raised its front right paw and swept it toward Gold Zorn at an incredible speed, and at the same time, blue flames erupted from its body, hurtling directly toward Gold Zorn. This soul spirit had been with Jiang Diang all the way from rank 10 to rank 98, and it had become extremely powerful over this extended span of time. Gold Zorn's eyes were as glittering and translucent as a pair of golden crystals, and neither side was able to gain the upper hand as the golden light emanating from Gold Zorn's body clashed with the infernal flame beast's blue flames. Gold Zorn twisted around in the air to evade the infernal flame beast's sharp claws, then swept its tail toward the infernal flame beast like a giant whip. In response, the infernal flame beast made no effort to evade and simply allowed Gold Zorn's tail to strike its body, but in the instant that it was struck, it abruptly swelled slightly in size. Gold Zorn's tail sank into the infernal flame beast's body as if it were a mere illusion, but at the same time, the infernal flame beast's blue flames reared up with even greater ferocity to incinerate Gold Zorn from all sides. These blue flames were capable of directly incinerating the target soul, and Tang Wulin could sense Gold Zorn's pain through their spiritual connection. Gold Zorn had only developed intelligence through its constant evolution. If its intelligence were to be erased, then that would result in irreversible damage. Light flashed through Tang Wulin's eyes, and the scales on Gold Zorn's body immediately began to shimmer with bright golden light. At the same time, it opened its mouth to let loose a deafening dragon's roar. Roar. The spectators had all heard the same roar during Tang Wulin's battle against Huang Sangyang the day before, and even though the version unleashed by Gold Zorn was slightly less powerful, it still caused the infernal flame beast to stiffen for an instant. Bright golden light erupted from Gold Zorn's body as it abruptly swept its front paws through the air. Boom. This didn't appear to have been a very significant motion, but it created a powerful explosive effect, and the infernal flame beast was sent flying amid an anguished howl. Jiang Diang's expression changed slightly, and blue light flashed in his eyes as the infernal flame beast tumbled through the air a few times before landing on its feet. However, its aura was clearly not as domineering as before. Tang Wulin harumphed coldly upon seeing this. Jiang Diang was significantly underestimating Gold Zorn if he thought he could restrict it like this. As Tang Wulin's bonded soul spirit, Gold Zorn possessed all of Tang Wulin's soul skills, particularly his Golden Dragon King abilities. The Golden Dragon King bloodline was undoubtedly one of the most powerful bloodlines in existence, and even though Gold Zorn only possessed a very small portion of the Golden Dragon King bloodline, it was still superior to all other soul beasts in this area. The dragon's repulse and golden dragon vibrational explosion were more than enough for it to send the infernal flame beast flying. The infernal flame beast didn't actually have a physical body. It was merely able to use a strange type of soul skill that made its body insubstantial, but even an insubstantial body would be damaged by energy-based attacks. Of course, Gold Zorn had also been harmed somewhat by its blue flames, so it could be said that the first clash had concluded in a tie. On the rostrum, NC was staring at Gold Zorn with a stunned look in his eyes. He was naturally aware that Jiang Diang possessed a bonded soul spirit, but he didn't think that Tang Wulin would have one as well. Jiang Diang's soul spirit was clearly of a higher caliber than Gold Zorn, and he was a rank 98 hyper Douluo while Tang Wulin was only a soul Douluo. With such a vast disparity between their cultivation ranks, the power gap between the two soul spirits should have been very apparent, but that wasn't actually the case. During that first clash, Gold Zorn hadn't fallen to a disadvantage. This entailed that Tang Wulin's soul spirit possessed a superior bloodline to the infernal flame beast. One had to realize that the infernal flame beast was an ancient beast that had already been extinct for countless years, and this soul spirit had been developed by the Spirit Pagoda. It was an extremely rare mutated black soul spirit, and it was completely different from the mass-produced black soul spirits that the Spirit Pagoda was currently churning out. The infernal flame beast wasn't the highest caliber soul spirit that Jiang Diang possessed, but as his bonded soul spirit, it shared the closest tie with him. In terms of appearance, Gold Zorn was more pleasing to the eyes to the vast majority of spectators. It was very lithe and powerful, and even somewhat elegant, thus creating a stark contrast with the infernal flame beast's sinister appearance. Both of the soul spirits only stopped momentarily before pouncing toward one another again. Following that first clash, they had developed a basic understanding of one another's powers. The infernal flame beast was still as fast as ever, and it rushed over to Gold Zorn before swiping its front right paw toward Gold Zorn's neck. Gold Zorn opened its mouth to expel a ball of golden flames, which transformed into a dragon's head before exploding in midair, sending powerful shockwaves sweeping forth in all directions. The infernal flame beast was forced to recoil and unleash more more blue flames to withstand the shockwaves. Following that clash, the two separated once again, and on this occasion, it was Goldsong's turn to take the initiative. It sprang toward the infernal flame beast, and at the same time, countless blue silver emperor vines erupted from its body. As a soul spirit, it was obviously unable to directly use Tang Wuling's martial soul, but it could use its own power to emulate Tang Wuling's soul skills. The infernal flame beast faltered slightly upon seeing this, clearly rather perplexed by this ability being displayed by Goldsong, which didn't exactly correspond with its powers. However, it reacted very quickly, and the blue flames around its body swirled before forming a giant vortex. The vortex shielded its body, while the flames within the vortex transformed into a series of sharp blades that threatened to tear the oncoming blue silver emperor vines into shreds. Goldsong sprang up into the air and appeared right above the infernal flame beast, then swept its claws downward to unleash its golden dragon annihilation claws. Chapter 1330. The infernal flame beast didn't display any sign of weakness whatsoever and abruptly reared up again, following which a projection that was identical to the infernal flame beast sprang forth through the air. Boom! Powerful shockwaves surged through the air as golden and blue light erupted in all directions, and neither side was able to gain the upper hand. The two bonded soul spirits clashed over and over again, leaving streaks of dazzling light in their wake. The first feeling that all of the spectators were struck by was that this match was already worth the ticket price. Soul spirits were extremely familiar entities to everyone, and the vast majority of people in the Douluo Empire had seen soul spirits before. However, almost no one had seen such powerful soul spirits before. This was more like a clash between a pair of ancient great beasts, and all of the spectators were thoroughly enraptured. The vast majority of spectators didn't have the technical acumen to analyze the battle, but the spectacular display being put on by these two soul spirits was more than enough to ignite their excitement. The golden dragon and blue beast engaged in one violent clash after another, and the two seemed to be evenly matched. Tang Wulin was looking at Zhang Diang from afar, and Zhang Diang was also looking back at him. All of a sudden, Zhang Diang's pupils contracted slightly as he could see purple light shimmering within Tang Wulin's eyes. Is he going to use his purple demon eyes to throw me off? The rules of the match stipulated that only soul spirits were allowed to engage in the battle, but who could say anything if no one noticed the spiritual interference that Tang Wulin was about to exert? Just as Zhang Diang was being distracted by this, a burst of golden light suddenly erupted from Tang Wulin's body, following which a golden halo instantly encompassed the entire competition platform. A thunderous dragon's roar also abruptly rang out, and this was none other than Tang Wulin's violent golden dragon domain. In the instant that the golden halo appeared, a golden halo also erupted from Goldsong's body, and it instantly assimilated itself with the violent golden dragon domain unleashed by Tang Wulin. Goldsong's body expanded drastically to 30 meters in length in the blink of an eye, and its eyes also quickly took on a crimson color. Boom! The infernal flame beast was lifted up by a strike from one of Goldsong's front paws, then struck by a vicious golden dragon with its tail that sent it flying through the air. He tricked me. Zhang Diang was furious. He had reacted a split second slower than he otherwise would have, as he had been distracted by the threat of Tang Wulin's purple demon eyes, and Tang Wulin had taken full advantage of this opportunity to unleash this attack. A burst of piercing blue flames abruptly rose up from Zhang Diang's body, and the infernal flame beast instantly transformed into a ball of flames. Goldsong's subsequent attacks nearly passed through the flames without inflicting any damage, and at the same time, specks of blue flames had appeared on its body. However, after being enhanced by the violent golden dragon domain, Goldsong was virtually unable to sense pain, and it wasn't slowed down at all by the blue flames burning on its body. It let loose a thunderous golden dragon roar, and the infernal flame beast was instantly forced back into retreat. It was quite clear that Goldsong had gained the upper hand during that exchange. Right at this moment, a dull rumbling boom suddenly rang out, and bolts of lightning crashed down from the heavens, hurtling directly toward Goldsong. At the same time, a series of vines rapidly emerged from the ground. In contrast with blue silver emperor vines, these vines were segmented like bamboo poles, and were of a dark purple color. As these vines appeared, the entire competition platform was transformed into a sea of lightning, which formed a cage with the lightning up above that encompassed Goldsong within it. Tang Wulin's heart jolted at the sight of these vines, which had appeared without any premonition, and he knew that his opponent had released his second soul spirit. Taking advantage of the threat that the lightning posed to Goldsong, the infernal flame beast rushed back into Zhang Diang's body, and when it re-emerged after the span of just a single breath, it seemed to have completely recovered to its peak condition. At this moment, a string of violent booms were already erupting from within the cage of lightning. Bolts of lightning struck Goldsong's body from all sides, and it could only use its golden dragon body and golden dragon tyrant body to protect itself. As such, it had been reduced to nothing more than a massive target that could only turn to passive defense. Zhang Diang was a rank 98 limit Douluo, so his soul spirits were overall more powerful than Tang Wulin's. Furthermore, this infernal lightning vine was an extremely rare plant type soul beast that the vast majority of soul masters had never even heard of, let alone witnessed as a soul spirit. This was a type of plant system soul beast that stood at the pinnacle of the plant world ever since it came into existence. It possesses innate intelligence, and in its infancy stage, it resembled a bamboo shoot that comprised of only a single segment. This type of soul beast grew exclusively in places where lightning strikes were very commonplace, as it could only grow and develop from being struck by lightning. With each lightning strike it endured, it would become slightly more powerful, and 100 lightning strikes for it was the equivalent to a year of cultivation for a normal soul beast. Lightning was one of the most violent forms of power in nature, and the infernal lightning vine thrived on this form of volatile power. In the initial phase of its development, its growth would always be very slow and arduous, as it had to wait for natural lightning to strike it. As such, it could take 10 years to accumulate 100 lightning strikes, which meant that its rate of cultivation was often more than 10 times slower than that of the average soul beast. However, once an infernal lightning vine reached 100 years of age, everything would change. This was because once it reached that level, it would be able to actively draw lightning to itself during lightning storms. As such, it would often be able to endure hundreds of lightning strikes in a single stormy night, and even though it would take more than 100 lightning strikes at that point to achieve the equivalent effect of a year of cultivation, its rate of cultivation would still be significantly enhanced. Due to the special nature of this soul beast, once an infernal lightning vine reached a certain stage in its development, it would attain extremely fierce and destructive power, and it would often create spectacular phenomena, such as a domain of lightning. As the infernal lightning vine became more powerful, this lightning domain would continue to expand, until it devoured everything around in the surrounding area. A 10,000-year-old infernal lightning vine was capable of altering the weather and controlling the power of lightning to destroy anything it so pleased. As such, once an infernal lightning vine of that caliber appeared, disaster would inevitably strike the area it had emerged in, and only extremely powerful beings would be able to destroy it. However, there was a fatal flaw to the infernal lightning vine's method of cultivation. Due to the fact that it had to constantly absorb lightning to enhance itself, the lightning within it would continue to compress, thereby building up extremely fierce and destructive power. Once this destructive power reached a certain level, the vine would be constantly at risk of destroying itself. As such, the vast majority of infernal lightning vines eventually died by their own figurative swords. The general lifespan of an infernal lightning vine was around 20,000 to 50,000 years before it would self-detonate, and very rarely did an infernal lightning vine reach over 50,000 years of age. As for infernal lightning vines that reached 100,000 years of age, none had ever appeared in history. For lightning attribute soul masters, infernal lightning vines were an extremely sought-after soul beast, as it could provide 3 types of extremely powerful soul skills, which were lightning forest, lightning hell, and lightning dance. Generally speaking, the vast majority of vine-type plant system soul beasts provided binding soul skills. The blue silver emperor vine was one of these. However, the infernal lightning vine had no such ability. It was a type of soul beast that was born to destroy, and that was why it had been rated as the most powerful attacker among plant system soul beasts. As a student of Shrek Academy, Tang Wulin was able to instantly identify this soul beast, and he immediately drew a sharp breath. No one had seen an infernal lightning vine for countless years, and during Shrek Academy's 20,000-year history, only 3 soul masters had possessed a soul ring from this type of soul beast. With such an insanely powerful soul beast up his sleeve, it was no wonder that Zhang Diang was so confident and assured. Even with the enhancements provided by the violent golden dragon domain, Goldsong had been forced completely onto the back foot by the infernal lightning vine's lightning forest, and its lightning hell and lightning dance was supposed to be even more powerful. This was truly a destructive force of nature. Right at this moment, the relaxed voice of the beautiful silk tulip suddenly sounded deep within Tang Wulin's mind. Release me, my lord. Are you sure? You're not an offensive soul spirit. Tang Wuolin was rather hesitant. Don't forget that you're the son of nature, my lord. Your opponent is making a grave error by releasing such a soul spirit. You're still missing a ninth soul ring in the future, and I think this infernal lightning vine will be the ideal choice. Before Tang Wuolin had a chance to ask any further questions, a burst of pink light was released from his body, and a giant purple flower appeared, dispersing a natural cloud of faint mist around him. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.